In terms of issues or problems, multifaceted, kind of multifold. On the one hand, as it relates to traditional RMIS, we were facing the problem of tech debt, I think we'd call it today. Back then, we probably called it obsolescence. So custom code, a unique stream of data code, which meant we were much overdue for update or upgrade, and we were completely unable to do so. So we had that relative to the RMIS side of the business, and then we had all kinds of needs and wants relative to integration and bringing different disparate parts of the business and or risk management related to that together. So we had sort of that two-headed monster that we were trying to fight. Risk Connect, part of the story that creates the solution, really matches the twofold or two-headed monster that I talked about. On the one hand, it was the conversion and the conversion of the legacy RMIS database and all that went with it, bringing that into more modern technology, much more in the way of capability and the opportunity to begin the integration journey. On the other hand, it was the other end of the integration journey and the bridge to that, where we could begin to think about integrated risk management and all of those other components that weren't a part of traditional operational risk management. We're a multi-product client, so that means the traditional RMIS side of things, claims management, policy management, values, those sorts of things, as well as EHS. And then we move to some of the non-traditional components, so business continuity planning, enterprise risk management, the GRC suite, if you will, compliance, and some of the emerging areas of risk management or integrated risk management. I often say that those of us in risk management, whether it's the G, the R, or the C, at the end of the day, we're all pursuing a common challenge through a different facet of the prism, if you will. Well, when we're going after that common challenge, we have historically been going after it individually, each of us on our own, and we're bothering the business in the process. Well, where Risk Connect came to bear and came to really help us in terms of a solution is, what if we could all go after it, still on our own, according to our own path, but in a complementary manner? You ask the question once and you live off the answer a number of times. You have the ability to apply that, whatever it may be, that developing body of knowledge. You have the ability to apply that, to develop it, to further it according to each of the disciplines, but out of a common repository of both answers from the business and knowledge from the functions that support the business. What I'm looking for, capability. So that capability comes in one hand, and maybe it's the Salesforce side as well. That's the development side, the coding and the actual development. Not capable of that on my own, certainly looking for that fundamentally. But you could give me all the technical capability in the world. You could develop all the code that one might ever be able to develop. And if I can't use it, if I can't leverage it, if I can't utilize it and operationalize it in my business, then it's never going to be of any value. That capability as well is what I look for and what I value from Risk Connect. So it's the technical side, it's the practical subject matter expertise, and the ability to put those together that really forms the capabilities and the valuable capabilities. When I hold up my hand like this and say, what can I do with one finger? There are certain things I can do with one finger and certain things I can do well. But what can I do with five? I can do a lot more things. There's a lot more literally within my grasp. And what if I bring 10 to the party and I have the ability to integrate them? There's a whole lot more, exponentially more, that I can do with all 10 when they work together, when they assist me in multiple ways, when they fill in gaps, than I could do with any of them back in that singular fashion. So quantifying a lot of what you might recognize or identify as success or as progress in risk management, it's often incredibly difficult. But there are a couple of ways that we do that in our organization. On the claims side, which is a bit more mature for us, it's highly transactional. We look at things like claims velocity. We look at things like labor hours to complete tasks, so on and so forth. And we've had very significant reductions in that regard. We're a much more efficient organization. We're a much more automated organization. We're a much more optimized organization. What that generally means for us is more claims processed to closure on behalf of our employees and customers in a more efficient, more effective, and more economical manner. All of that we can measure in terms of dollars, in terms of closures, in terms of throughput, or whatever we might call it. On the other hand, when we talk about success, it's the ability to learn and know more that equips us to do more. When we think of things like root cause analysis, when we think of things like our quarterly safety meetings with our restaurant teams, those are things that we couldn't execute well and or consistently. But now we can serve those things to the restaurants. We can serve those to the restaurants and not ask them to start from scratch, but to ask them to simply finish the picture. So that's a much more complementary manner than we used to interact with our restaurants. And then beyond that, it's the ability to integrate. We look at it as a continuum. And now for us, risk management, integrated risk management, extends from the design phase of our restaurants, of our products, of our finishes, of our environments. From the design phase to the prototype phase to the accident prevention and behavioral side of things to the reactionary. What do we do when the controls weren't effective enough to prevent? How do we manage the outcome of those situations? So for us, it's really been about that entire continuum and the ability to bring that entire continuum to life for the organization, to connect it. And now what we're really focused on is, and then how do we quantify each of those steps? The relationship with Risk Connect is a long-standing relationship for us. I think we're probably getting fairly close to 10 years anyway. We came to know Risk Connect when it was a much smaller organization. We came to know Risk Connect when it and we were much less mature in our desires, in our understanding, in our vision collectively. We're now in a relationship with Risk Connect that brings all of that history to bear, but it puts us in a position where it's truly a collaboration. Risk Connect, a valued and trusted partner for us. Subject matter expertise. Yes, the development side of the application, but the subject matter side as well. We spend a lot of time comparing perspectives. We spend a lot of time asking questions. We spend a lot of time identifying and bringing to the table challenges. And then we rely on Risk Connect, having served a couple of thousand clients, having likely addressed our challenge 10 times over, if not 100, to take our vision, to populate and colorize our vision, to take our short-sightedness and say, the 99th time that we did this that resembled what you're doing, there was a gap. And that gap looks a lot like something that you might be leaving on the table as a gap as well. And we work our way through there. So I would say it's a consultative partnership, that relationship that we now have with Risk Connect. The advice I'd give others is study hard. Create your vision. Know what you're looking for. Know what your expectations are. And that's difficult for us these days. We know that we have a problem. We know that we should solve the problem, or we know that it looks like the rest of the world is doing something about something that we probably know little about. What we don't know is, what do I do after the two buzzwords or the 3 sentences that I know about this subject? And that's where I'd say you've got to design your vision. You've got to have some expectations. You've got to, as we say in our organization, you've got to populate the whiteboard. If you bring the populated whiteboard to bear, you can then look at a Risk Connect and you can say, design me this, build me that, solve this challenge for me and with me. So I'd say you've got to design your whiteboard. You've got to populate your whiteboard. But then it's a matter of step in and dive in. Go all in, commit, seek that collaborative partnership, and capitalize on the return that's available.